What's up, guys? Today we're going over a new shoulder charge build that makes the game so easy on even the hardest difficulties. So Grandmaster, Master, whatever it is, you just run through everything, and it might be one of the strongest in-game builds this game has ever seen. And it's gonna make anything with champions in it absolutely free. So let's get right into it. First, looking at the changes to shoulder charge this season, there's gonna be two for PvE among this list. The first one being increased damage versus PvE combatants by 25%, and the second one is the arc shoulder charge now blinds enemies in the area on hit. So if we first look at that in the game, so on top tree striker for the seismic strike, if you look at how the blinding works now, I believe it only blinds enemies that take damage. So for lower tier enemies, if you do damage to them, they're probably going to die, so they don't get blinded because they're dead. So it's not quite like a blinding GL where it's just going to blind a huge area. It's only things that take damage. So for the most part in PvE and normal activities, you won't really see the effect of this. But in higher tier activities where enemies are going to survive the AoE damage of it, you know, that might be pretty cool, and it'll blind a lot of enemies. But the point of this build is the pure damage of the shoulder charges now. So the best exotic to pair with shoulder charge has always been the Peregrine Greaves, which will increase the damage of the shoulder charge if you activate it while airborne. So if we look at how that works in the game, the base arc shoulder charge does these two numbers right here, roughly 31,000. Then if we go ahead and jump with Peregrine Greaves and do the same vein, you see one number stays the same while the other one goes up by a lot. So it went from 32,000 to 117,000, which is 3.66x more damage. And we look at the other two shoulder charges with the solar one, it's going to hit quite a bit less at roughly like 20,000 less per hit, but will obviously melting point them and debuff them. Then the void one does the exact same damage as the arc at roughly that 108,000 number. So between the arc and void one, they both do the same amount of damage, but for builds, arc is going to be a lot better. And one of the main things we can take advantage of this season is going to be focusing lens. Whenever an enemy is affected by stasis, our light abilities will do increased damage. So the first thing that comes to mind for me is using the new Dawning Sword, the Zephyr with Cold Still, which will slow the targets. So if we look at how that works on Carl, go ahead and slow him, and shoulder charge with Peregrine Greaves. You see the numbers will be yellow now and go up by 25%, so 1.25x for a total of 146,000. But where the huge damage increase comes from is when the target is frozen. So we swing at Carl a few times and he will eventually freeze. It will now go up a lot higher and instant kill him at almost 300,000. So if the target is frozen, we're going to be doing 2.75x more damage for a total of 322,000. So Cold Steel on the Zephyr might not be the best way to freeze the target instantly. So our other options are going to be the Salvation's Grip, more or less just a waste of your heavy slot. So I think the better choice will be the newly buffed Chirothesia, which is the exotic sidearm, where now once you get a kill, you can convert it into what seems more or less like a Dustful Grenade that freezes instantly. So looking at that in the game, this thing is extremely good now. Just simply get a kill, convert it to the charged shot, and it will just freeze a huge radius. So I'm probably gonna make a build with this weapon at some point on stasis, but for how it works with our build right now, simply get a kill, convert it over to the charge shot, and you freeze whatever target you want. Then you go shoulder charge them, then you have that full combo damage of over 300,000. Another thing we can do completely by ourselves is gonna be Wells of Ions, which is when we pick up an arc elemental well, our next melee will do increased damage. So look at that, pick up an arc well, we have it for 10 seconds, so you have to melee something within that 10 seconds. And that's going to be roughly a 30% increase, now doing over 419,000 damage on Carl, which is way more than enough to kill him in one hit. And the final thing we could add in is if a teammate had a debuff, for example, Tractor Cannon, that'd take it to over 545,000 damage. So now, no matter what level activity you're doing, if you're doing a Legend lost sector where it's only 1320, champions don't easily die without Wells of Ion, which makes it a lot easier. That way you don't have to pick up these Arc Elemental Wells. Then on a master difficulty activity, for example, the Ordeal, once again, without the Wells of Ions, champion still dead. Doesn't matter if it's an overload, barrier, whatever it is, they're just simply dead. And finally, what happens if we try it on a Grandmaster, where we're forced to be well under light, once again, without Wells of Ion? As you'll see, the champion will be low enough that you can finish them. So yeah, every champion in the game, doesn't matter what light level you're playing, they're just simply dead from this single combo. So overall, I don't think it's worth the stress to try to get the Wells of Ions buff. Due to it being only 10 seconds and on something like a Grandmaster Nightfall, that's not going to be the easiest thing to manage. So if we look at the build I'm using, I have the Glacial Chasm with Reserve Burst. Then in my heavy slot, I have Half Truce for Sword Skating, or I could use a Machine Gun for Ag Clear, whatever it is. You kind of have a free slot in terms of your heavy. If it was a longer boss fight, you could still use a Linear Fusion. And our first mod will be Melee Wellmaker. This will be best for anything below Grandmaster difficulty, but once you're on GM level, I would change it out for the Overcharged Wellmaker, which is when you finish the combatant, you'll get 2 Arc Elemental Wells. So the whole point of this slot is to make Arc Elemental Wells whenever you use the Shoulder Charge. Then our next mod will be Bountiful Wells, which will give us 1 extra Arc Well per time we proc Melee Wellmaker or the Overcharged Wellmaker. And when we pick up those Arc Elemental Wells, we have Well of Striking, which will give us more melee energy when we pick up the Arc Elemental Wells. We also have Elemental Charge on to become Charge of Light ×2 when we pick up the Arc Wells. Also in our gauntlets, we have this mod right here, Momentum Transfer, which will give us melee energy whenever we do damage with our grenades. I also have Sidearm Loader on. If you're doing something with Unstoppable, you can use Unstoppable Sidearm, because that's the only champion that you will actually need a champion mod for. And with those stacks of Charge of Light, we have Heavy Handed to get half of our melee back when we use it, along with the secondary part for the infinite ammo with the Glacial Chasm. And just like my Warlock builds with Discipline, on this you want the highest strength possible. With the armor I had, I could only get to tier 9, which is pretty good, and I still have tier 9 recovery, so honestly pretty good. But ideally you'd want tier 10 strength to get your melee back as fast as possible. And the way this build works is for your first melee, you won't get it back instantly, but you will become Charge of Light, and all you have to do is use your 2 grenades, and doing damage with your grenades will recharge your Shoulder Charge. Also, you can use the perk on your boots where when you pick up an Orb of Power, you will get melee energy. So getting your first melee back is the only hard one. After that, you have the full combo going, and with tier 9, as you see, I practically get my entire next melee back. If you had tier 10, I believe you would, but by the time you get to the next champion, you'll definitely get that remaining chunk back. And if you're doing a GM Nightfall, you do the same thing, but now you finish and you change to the Overcharged Wellmaker, and that should create 3 Arc Elemental Wells and give you your melee back even faster than even the Melee Wellmaker. So yeah, this build just makes every champion in the game completely free. You just simply freeze them and then Shoulder Charge them, and they're just all dead. Doesn't matter if it's Overload, Barrier, Unstoppable, they're just all simply dead. And with the way the mods work, you should be able to chain your Shoulder Charge over and over again, and you'll have it ready for every single champion. The damage your Shoulder Charge is doing is nearly on par with the Thunder Crash with the Thunder Crash exotic. So yeah, you're just practically walking around with unlimited Thunder Crashes, and it's crazy. No one on your team will have to worry about champion mods outside of Unstoppable, and you're just good to go. So obviously this is a great build for solo lost sectors, along with anything with champions in it, Master Dungeons, Master Vogue, or all the different Nightfalls. And yeah, I think that is going to be it for the video. There's going to be a little bit of gameplay from the Legend Lost sector, and the one it was this morning while I was recording is one of my least favorite in the entire game. I probably only played it a few times ever, so I'm not quite familiar with all the enemy spawns. So ignore some of the sloppy parts of this gameplay, but as you can see, it just absolutely just runs through everything. So I'm going to leave you guys with that. Like usual, thanks for watching. Catch you guys next time.